This is Chris Smith and
Leslie Riddick.
Here we are in beautiful sunny Rotterdam. We're actually recording this outside in the beautiful sunshine outside the lovely hotel New York. What a fine place it's been.
It's amazing. Actually, you couldn't do justice. You know, we should be taking pictures of this because you can't describe it. I wake up every morning in this hotel, which is on the top end of a promontory, a pier that pushes into the Neue, I mean, Dutch is impossible to do properly, channel, which into the blue yonder is cranes, actually looking beautiful in silhouette tonight. And you can hear this boats passing, barges passing, water taxis, people on bicycles coming up to this end bit here because it's a great place to have coffee and a beer, and it's busy. It's extraordinary how busy it is for a sort of dead-endy bit. But mostly it's because this hotel used to be the terminus for the America line that took people across, you know, to the Americas when they were emigrating and there was big poverty here. And now they've resurrected that headquarters, turned it into this really fabulous hotel. And it's probably sort of emblematic of Rotterdam because it's kind of new and old at the same time. And actually that's what this place seems to specialise in.
Yeah, it seems to, Rotterdam in particular seems to be an interesting combination of old and new, and the new architectural styles are significantly different. We went to a particular museum where we were on a lovely bike tour where the guide was saying, and each facade is uniquely different. And if I look at these 4 poles outside the main entrance, each one is different, as if this delight in creating something new and something slightly different is a direct contrast to what might be the need to hold on to the traditional, make sure the old is
revered. Except they do. It's funny because despite all this kind of emphasis on modernism, which is a virtue of necessity really, this place was bombed to smithereens in 1940. You see the date, it was a date in May, you see it all over the city. We've had 2 very good guides, very expert, well-educated, one a philosophy degree holder, one a history degree holder, and they both say that the Dutch had basically surrendered and the Germans then bombed them. This is clearly a point of contention, but nonetheless, 250 square, whatever,
hectares, meters, who knows?
The whole centre was just disappeared completely, and it left them, although only 600 people were killed in that, but it left them with a problem. After the war, they decided there was a kind of postmodern era. The architects were let rip. Some of the stuff they produced is horrible. There are kind of cubist houses, well, they're cube houses, and we were shown around by a guy, I think it's called Ed, who used to own one of them. He owned it for what seemed like 6 months, got out pretty sharpish, then turned it into a museum, and has been in there in his own museum in the shade. It is never daylight inside those houses. They're the worst designed houses, and I think actually it's a conspiracy of journalists always seeking novelty that's keeping those damn things afloat, because apparently one of our guides was saying that the people of Rotterdam could easily see those just to be demolished, but people from Spain and France, people who are into cubism and art or whatever, keep coming here and finding them anew and marvelling at how anyone could have built something so adventurous, and so they stay up.
Yeah, and to be honest, they do look a bit of an eyesore, and
check out the radiator in one of the pictures, right? The radiator that is at 45 degrees inverted to the ground because that's the shape of the room. There's no common sense or aesthetic anything behind it. But anyway, so that was probably a bit of a low point on the old architectural front. But apart from that, this is supposed to be Manhattan on the Maas, isn't it?
Yes,
the river
right.
is a tributary of the Rhine.
Yeah, and there's little signs up along the river which actually do things like say 1007, which is the number of kilometres to the source up in Lake Constant in Switzerland, which I didn't know. So it's kind of vaguely fascinating to see the signage that does work in this place is something pointing to, I guess, geographer's
probably another
delight.
continent away.
But the signage within the city itself is pretty
non-existent.
minimal.
But I mean, I think that's because this is delightfully not a tourist city. I haven't seen another person since we were here looking like us, puzzling over maps or anything like that. It's like all the tourists go to Amsterdam, and Rotterdam is for the Dutch.
Yeah, that's true. But it does leave you with that wonderful thing, which is you have a city of nearly 600,000 tourist guides, because every time you've actually asked anybody something, or even when you're getting on the tram and not swiping a ticket, the guard is there to explain things, and also to say, oh, well, where are you going, and have a nice day, and let me stop the tram and show you where you go, and all very delightful. And that's the great thing about not being professional tourists, because
they're not tired of other people yet.
The sound behind us is
it's great, isn't it? That's a water taxi.
That's right.
And these guys, when they corner, it's unbelievable. It's like something out of Miami Vice, but they're actually little covered boats, and they zip across the harbour here. I mean, the astonishing thing about it is we're still probably 10 miles from the sea.
Yeah, well, a little bit.
It just goes on and on and on.
The Europort is about 25 kilometres.
Even gosh.
So it is an enormous place, and as you'll see from the photographs that we've actually shown from within the Maritime Museum that we went to see, it is a pretty. The port itself is amazing, and it makes, as I think, I heard somebody today say they never look at.
Somebody, it was me.
That was you. That's right.
Yeah,
saying,
I'll never look at a port in Scotland and call it a port again. I mean, to call what we have a port, having seen this, is like calling a sort of small bonsai tree a forest.
Yeah.
We have quays. That's it. We don't have a port. If they call this a port, this used to be the #1 port. I think Shanghai and is it Singapore?
Singapore, no. Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong are all in front of them. But I mean, the
and they're building another one here.
Yeah, they're building another one here, and the containers. It's amazing. You go out and see enormous container farms. I mean, they are just in.
The thing is, you wouldn't believe that you could enjoy seeing this. This is the weird thing. But coming to an active, operating, working, functioning, happy, thriving, you can see it. There's just a buzz everywhere in this city. It's fantastic. And when we went to the Maritime Museum, Fandabadozi, this is the second museum I've seen connected to the sea that could, well, I'll wait to see what the Riverside Museum in Glasgow's like when it opens in June. But these are fantastic. There's a long half-hour, very clever exhibition using 6 screens of all different aspects of the river's history, with at the same time an enormous lit-up kind of model of it, perhaps 50 foot long or something, that lit up when it was talking about the parts of the river. In the big screens behind it. That sounds dead complicated, but actually it was beautifully done with sound, which is probably what made us come and sit here beside the sound of the river, because all the things, even in 3 days, we've learned to identify, like the sound of the trams constantly, are conjured up on that track, and it's tremendous. It gives you this sense of a very busy city.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, be travelling around us, there's one passenger boat, there are 2 very large barges with maybe a couple of dozen containers on. And the barges as they go along, as you'll see in the photographs, have all got, well, these 2 haven't, but most of them have got the little cabin where the captain is, which can elevate it up and down, and a car alongside it.
Yeah, so you can get home.
So it's
what they also have are they're Maersk. And another thing that was very impressive about that museum is they had an exhibition in it explaining how, what was the name of the company again?
Ned Lloyd.
Ned Lloyd was the combination of lots of different Dutch maritime shipping companies, and that sounds kind of boring. It then turned into Maersk, a Danish company, which is now the biggest or 3rd biggest shipping line in the world. And actually, for kids, there was a whole bunch of school kids in. It was an incredibly imaginatively done exhibition. I mean, you couldn't see how you could possibly interest school children in takeovers and mergers and company structures. But they'd done things like a mock-up of the boardroom of the 6 guys who were each shipping giants who decided to merge together, and each of those 6 had a history of who they were and how many ships they had and how powerful they were. And it allowed you to sit in those seats, imagining you were these guys, deciding would it be a good idea to go ahead with this merger or not. And the kids were all sitting in the seats and pretending to be the different guys. And they had a carpet around the edge of this with a timeline in the carpet, you know, actually woven in, not some, you know, cheapy kind of exhibition, but something that was clearly going to be there for a long time. I suppose it's always easy to get excited about other people. But I just thought, would we have done that? We wouldn't, because it would seem like we were pushing some commercial thing, and yet this is what makes the world go round, decisions like this. And why wouldn't you have this in Rotterdam? It's shaped the whole nature of this port.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. That, I mean, for a lot of what you might think about Rotterdam, I mean, it is to have this kind of size of commercial organisation right in the very centre of it. And just thinking of all the money and currency that must be flowing up and down these rivers, I mean, it is absolutely amazing.
We've got competition. There's a guy sitting on one of those white roundy things that you used to fling ropes around to tie boats up, talking noisily to himself with a mobile phone. We hear some American people on the nearby swings and stuff like this. But I mean, what the heck? Now, what else were we going to talk about? That tower, what was it called again?
That's the Euromast.
Right. It's as tall as... you're at the top.
Well, it was very, very tall. It's up there with the CN Tower in Toronto because it's got.
Is it higher than anything in London?
Who knows? I mean,
I couldn't get out at the top. Actually, I got completely overcome by a sort of desire to probably jump myself off the top as the lift doors opened.
Yeah, it's just a girly thing. So we'll pass that by quickly. But it's an amazing thing because apparently it was built to allow the Queen to have a look at Rotterdam and everything else. The views are magnificent. It's again dominated by the port, and it's just delightful. It's the view, the vista is all symmetrical, as you'll be seeing by the photographs that should be accompanying the visual version of this.
And you will also see that the restaurant in it was just beautiful. I mean, such a still place to sit and watch everything. I can't help thinking, my grandfather used to live in Wick, and there was a place there called the Old Man's Rest, and this was a little kind of wooden hut really that the old boys used to go and sit in, because so many of them had been connected with the sea and fishing, and they used to sit and, you know, watch the boats coming in and try and guess from the depth of them in the water how much they'd been able to catch and so on. I keep thinking of him because he would sit here, he would love it, just watching the coming and going of all these boats. And sometimes at times like this, I know this sounds ridiculous, but looking across at the kind of very regular facades on the other side, this looks a bit like Venice. You know, I mean, obviously it's not, but maybe this tells you something about how little in Britain we see active estuaries like this with loads of shipping. I mean, maybe this is not unusual for the rest of mainland Europe, but sadly these days, you know, we call a port something with a big ship tied up beside it.
Yeah, that's true. But I have to say the other thing that we noticed about this place is, and we will
bikes.
We'll touch on it. It's bikes.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's bike central. Like nearly everywhere in Holland, it's flat. Therefore, the cyclists are at a bit of an advantage. But it is a kind of it's a lot more relaxed cycling here than, say, the studied artifice of Amsterdam.
There's nobody wearing a helmet, and I know this is controversial, but fine, you know, because there isn't a problem. And I mean, we've seen mothers and fathers with their kids cycling with their, you know, their hands off the handlebars even. You know, they've got such perfect balance along streets that do technically have cars in them. There's just a completely different sense of confidence here. There's not going to be a problem, and seems there generally isn't. But I mean, we went on a great cycle tour, bicycle tour here. What was the name of the company again?
Archie Tours.
Archie Tours. That was the guide that was the philosopher that we had, Ava, who was tremendous. And this is a great way to see the place, because I mean, okay, you can be on a bike, but if you're from Britain, you're on the wrong side of the road. You're also on a bike in a city where you expect to be sharing the road with the car, and you don't know where you're going at all. And this is a very weavy in aroundy city. This is not your classically laid out, kind of grid pattern city. So you would at any turn be hesitant about where you're going next. But with Ava, we just fired along behind her. She took us in and out all over the place to wee cubbyhole places we would never have seen. And that then gave us the confidence to kind of take off the next day.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is remarkable for the cyclists in the sense that, I guess, if you have laws here which actually presume that the cyclist, the motorist is at fault and the cyclist is innocent, whatever happens, it tends to make the motorist a little bit more humane. But the other thing is that cyclists are motorists and motorists are cyclists. I mean, in the end, I think that's what does it. Because she was talking about not being a motorist. She was in a car with her boyfriend and noticed how difficult it was to spot cyclists who weren't wearing lights in the winter, and she went and bought some lights. So it's that thing. It's being both. And that's the great thing about here. People have experience of both. So it seems to me like all we have to do to get bikes more accepted in the UK is really simple: level the hills, put down cyclepaths everywhere, and actually convert the mental set of motorists and cyclists.
No, it's not. Cyclepaths conjure up what we've got, and I mean, we were talking to her about a book that is very funny called "Crap Cyclepaths: 10 yards of a cycle path that end in a bollard or a telephone box." That's not what's here. Crucially, they're not sharing the road with cars. They're on the pavement nearly all the time, and they're separated by a curb.
Yeah.
So you're in a separate little world of your own as a cyclist, where you have separate traffic lights, a separate sequence. They're separate also from pedestrians. And you once you get on the bike and get going, you feel as confident of having a flow organised for you through the traffic as a car does. So
it's about really reinstating the Radburn planning that went on with all of the English new towns after the Second World War, where this separation of pedestrian, cyclists and whatever was planned into places like Milton Keynes and Stevenage. So I think
fine, but I mean, you can just go to any blinking city where it works. And it just seems to me we do this classic thing of almost everything, of saying to people, get fit, and then there is no earthly way they actually will. Eat healthy, and they don't. Cycle around the place, and people won't, because you actually haven't planned it out for them. You just haven't recognised the fear people have of being on roads. Well, I love it. I love cycling on roads with cars and things. I don't know why, but But most normal people do not like doing it anymore.
So. Well, on that bombshell, I can feel time is failing us fast. Mr. Google is saying I can't put any more of this up online for you for free. So on that happy note, from Rotterdam, we would like to bid you goodbye.
In Dutch, but we can't.
We can't, but whatever.
But then that's another great thing. They all speak such fabulous English. Come here, it's marvellous.